As I recall, all 6 of us this day had a low. The first rehearsal was just absolute chaos. It was an 8-minute scene on film which made it long and involved. Well, Sam sat there and looked at us, and nobody knew his lines because we'd somehow all felt that there would be plenty of time to get sharp on the thing. Anyway, Sam said in this very calm but menacing voice,
"Gentlemen, you were hired to work on this film as actors, and I expect actors to know their lines when they come to work. Now, I'm willing to give you 20 minutes, and anyone can go wherever he wants to learn his lines. But when you come back, if you can't be an actor, you will be replaced."
Well, you've never seen so many frantic people wandering off behind sagebrush and everything else, leaning against adobe walls, you name it, but getting those lines down. William Holden.
Well, why don't you answer me, you damn yellow-livered trash?
Now, Pike, you know
I
damn
don't
well...
know a damn thing, except I either lead this bunch or end it right now.
Holden was wonderful. He was a great reflector of something in my father. There are so many things that he did in the Wild Bunch that reminded me of Dad. In the scene where they're in Angel's Village, the way Holden was sitting, his physicality, reminded me very much of my father. He kind of rests his elbow on his knee and says to Jaime Sanchez,
Either you learn to live with it, or we'll leave you here.
I thought, oh, Dad, I must have heard things like that 1,000,000 times from you. Sharon Peckinpah.
I go with you, Jefe.
Don Emilio and I are talking about the script when suddenly he says to me, "You know, the Wild Bunch, when they go into that town like that, are like when I was a child and we would take a scorpion and drop it on an anthill." And I said, "What?" And he said, "Yes, you see, the ants would attack the scorpion." And I said, "Get me the phone." And I dialed the producer in California and said to him, "I want ants and I want scorpions, and I don't care how you get them here." And from that point on, that was the way I saw the whole picture. I began rewriting immediately in order to get this sensational opening on paper.
As you know, the understory, the backstory is what makes most really good pictures good. The Wild Bunch is an action piece, you think, and yet it's character driven. So Struth and I just said, what's the least thing likely that these 2 terrible human beings who will literally stand there and fight for the right to say, I got to be the one to kill this person. And they're fighting over something, and now pride gets in the way. So we said, okay, that's the thing that would fit. What would make it even stranger? And so we decided to make them a little bit gay. Not overtly, and yet with what they did and what they said to each other. And now you've got these 2 miscreants who would kill their mother for 5 cents, getting offended because one of them calls another one a black liar. That's the backstory, and that's what we decided to do with it, and Sam went along with it, and we did it. L.Q. Jones.
Black liar! You shouldn't talk like that to me.
I'm sorry. Come on, TC. Help me get his boots.
They went into places in Mexico where even Mexicans had not been for a number of years. I had to age 25 years older than I am, which was a 3-hour makeup job by a brilliant makeup man named Al Greenway. Well, you know, I was costumed up here, and I got down there, and Sam just ripped them off of me, you know? And he said, "You're gonna wear one suit that's been taken off a dead man's body, and that's it."
Edmund O'Brien. The last scene to be filmed was the spectacular explosion that climaxes the bunch's looting of a military train. A bridge was built across the Rio Nazas near Torreon, with a center platform hinged at the back to swing open like a trapdoor, dropping the posse and their horses to the river below once the charges went off. None of the debris would be dangerous, as the superstructure was made of balsa wood, and the riders were outfitted with helmets and padding. Any heavy support pieces that might break loose were fastened with cables to keep them from floating into the stuntmen and horses before they could be picked up.
Originally, it was to be a cable across a river instead of the bridge, and the only reason for the change was that the river wasn't right to do a cable crossing. It didn't have enough current. But it's funny to me now because I argued with Sam about it. I said, Christ, you're not going to blow up another bridge. But Sam had a good retort.
It's not just blowing up a bridge, it's the way you blow up a bridge.
And he was right. It was terrific on the screen. Waylon Green.
But in those days, there was no way to fake a stunt like this with computer graphics. No matter how carefully placed and measured, the dynamite still had to be exploded below the platform that held the posse, before plunging them 20-some feet into the water. Ironically, the Rio Nazas is usually so shallow and placid that it had to be dammed upstream several weeks before the scene was scheduled, so that the water would develop a depth safe enough to do the stunt. But on this particular day, an unexpected wind made the current flow very fast.
Sam was really worried. He was afraid for the guys who went into the river. It was a dangerous river, fast and deep and black. I saw people being swept away to be caught downstream. Sam and Lucian both went in after a camera because they needed the footage. Strother Martin.
Peckinpah set up 6 cameras, including 2 on a raft secured by cables that stretched across the river. Timing was everything, paramountly for the safety of the stuntmen and horses, but also because retakes were not possible. The scene had been weeks in the preparation and planning. Now the moment was at hand. With the cameras rolling, the actors on their marks, the rescue boats in place, and the stuntmen set and ready to go, Peckinpah gave the call to action. The bridge was exploded at 1:55 in the afternoon of Sunday, June 3rd. Despite some close calls, the 5 stuntmen and their horses were safely recovered, and the last scheduled scene of the Wild Bunch was in the can. When it was over, Bud Hulbert, the special effects engineer, remarked,
"I've just had the opportunity to hang a Rembrandt. It'll probably never happen to me again."
Phil Feldman had the good sense to give Sam, whom Phil describes as something of a genius as a director, to give him his head and let him go, you know, because Sam may be very hard to work for, but he is an enormously creative human being, and that's really what separates the men from the boys. And Sam fought so hard to make every scene tell it as it is.
Edmund O'Brien.
I'm exhausted when I see it. I'm literally exhausted for hours. And all it is, really, is a simple adventure story.
By the time The Wild Bunch wrapped, the budget had nearly doubled to $6 million, and the schedule had stretched to 81 days. Peckinpah had shot over 330,000 feet of film with 1,288 camera setups. His final cut would contain over 3,600 shot-to-shot edits, more than any other color film made up to that time, and perhaps ever. Peckinpah had pushed a company of over 100 men and women to the limits of their endurance, and finally beyond, had seduced, inspired, and terrorized his actors and crew to give greater than they ever thought themselves capable, and had driven himself to his highest achievement as an artist. For more than 3 months, it had consumed his heart, his mind, even his body. He spent the last day at Churubusco Studios in Mexico City shooting miscellaneous reaction shots and inserts. Now, suddenly it was over, and nothing like it would ever come his way again. After the cast and crew departed, he wandered off to an isolated corner of the soundstage and wept.
The end of a picture is always an end of a life. Sam Peckinpah.
Damn, you sure must have hurt that railroad. They spent a lot of money setting up that ambush. I caught up with them 2 or 3 times. There was a man named Harrigan. Used to have a way of doing things. I made him change his ways. A hell of a lot of people, Dutch, just can't stand to be wrong. Pride. And they can't forget it. That pride, being wrong, or learn by it.